Okay, guys. So our next speaker is Miss Mary Gillett-de. Miss Mary Gillett-de holds an SSSECP, a Social Entrepreneurship Certificate Program qualification from GIBS. That's the Gordon Institute of Business Science, University of Pretoria. She holds a Bachelor of Social Work honors degree from UCT. At GIBS, she was awarded the Busisiwe Vilakazi Change Maker Achiever Award. She graduated from GIBS on 12 March 2014. She has more than 20 years of experience in the NGO sector, in academia and in private practice. The field in which she has worked include the rehabilitation of criminals, medical and psychiatric social work, individual and family therapy, child abuse and prevention, and also in management of NGOs. She has also addressed 2 summits in the homeless problems in Johannesburg in 2011 and 2012. In 2013, Ms. de Klerk conceived the idea of Josh, its creative approach to tackling the problem of homelessness in Johannesburg, its innovative funding model leading to its sustainability, and developed the social enterprise that became GIBS. Let's give Ms. Mary a round of applause.
Thank you very, very much, everybody. First of all, I'm going to go back and do the presentation that I did at the end of my time at GIBS when I conceived of Josh, and I will give you updates as to how far it's come since then. So I thought it would be a review for me and also introduce you to how much you have to do in terms of researching a viable solution to a problem. Okay, so I was looking. Basically, what it started off is that I've been involved, working with homeless people in Cape Town, and in Joburg, I could see the problem just mushrooming all over the place, and that people were moving people off a site, but they were literally going around the block, and it was just shifting the problem. And I thought we actually have to have a win-win situation that improves areas and deals with the homeless issue. So I looked for a sustainable solution to addressing homelessness in Johannesburg. So I looked at how to successfully reintegrate the homeless from the streets to society and thereby improving their lives in the city as a whole. I looked at who are the homeless. Now we have roughly 3 different kinds of homeless people. We've got the actual street homeless, the people who, have no work, have no place to stay, etc. We also have a group of people called rough sleepers, and they are people who have piece jobs in Johannesburg, but actually live somewhere out in Cosmo City or in Orange Farm or something, and they can't necessarily get back home during the week. And then we also have people who shun society willingly. In other words, they would have resources, but they've shunned it. They might have mental problems. Most of them do. So my question was, how many of them are there? And quite frankly, the city doesn't know. Where are they? Why are they there? And I'm based in Randburg. We're based in Randburg. So therefore, I was looking at why Randburg. And Randburg is because it is central. The taxi rank, etc. We've got Stratham Park. There's options open, and what services are there? And in fact, Johannesburg, being the large city it is, has unbelievably few services for homeless people if you compare Johannesburg to other cities worldwide and other cities countrywide. And then what are the solutions, what is best practice, and what is sustainability? I did literature review, and I looked at the fact that street persons are not squatters, and Johannesburg is not the city of gold. So then I looked at various other options, and I said, what were these things? Why were, the effects of apartheid on the rural-urban shift, and also the incredible problem because of the abject poverty in the rural areas of people coming to Joburg thinking they're going to find their pot of gold. So on the basis of that, I then started looking for useful models, and 2 occupational therapists have done a study on, because when people become homeless, they almost become like children, and they can't sort of think of the next day or thing. And those are not the trolley pushers. These are actual homeless people. So therefore, one needs to move people from a position of dependency to dignity, and you've got to do a lot of mindset change within that person. So I then looked at how latest research from overseas and global best practice, and I looked at creating social impact. So what did I come up with? I then also looked at other case studies countrywide, went to speak to a number of people, and in Cape Town they've got things like vouchers that you can buy. You buy a book of vouchers, and then you keep it in your car and you give it to somebody begging on the streets instead of cash, which we're going to roll out at the end of this year. But we've done, once you've got a soup kitchen directory and a whole host of participating soup kitchens. We're working on that at the moment. So then we would be able to, you would be able to buy it on the, from a petrol station or whatever, keep this book in your car, and then you would give one to a person. Okay, so therefore, then in Cape Town, for instance, they have a chain of overnight shelters. They have 14 operational shelters, and they offer 1,000 bed spaces per night. And they work on a fairly traditional basis of traditional welfare approach, and that does to some extent perpetuate dependency. Okay, if we're looking in Johannesburg, the nearest one here is in Rosebank, next door to the police station. It's called the Immaculata Shelter. It's been run by the Catholic Sisters, and it's over 30 years old and has 120 beds. It is always clogged. But they don't have any other an armada of services. They basically just provide accommodation. So once again, I looked at it and I thought, this is also dependency creating. I went to see a crowd in Pretoria who call themselves Homeless Solutions, and they were actually two homeless men that actually worked with their social worker to actually start this very small little organization. They've got a tiny little small house, and they work on 10 people at a time. So they've actually pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and they are also have job creation as well as part of it. So then the city of Johannesburg offers a shelter next door to the Constitutional Court, and that is they also do outreach, going to counsel people at Park Station to tell them Joburg is not the wonderful place that you think it might be. You may not get a job. While you've got money, which maybe you can go back, which doesn't actually work, and they have done some audits on numbers, and they do develop policies. So we're working with them. I also looked at an organisation called Men at the Side of the Road, and they do skills training and placement, but they're no longer operational. Working with Josh Coe, which is no relation to Josh, to actually, through the process, to provide low-cost rental stock in the area, and we are working with them. So based on all of these things, I then did field work, and I spoke to a number of people and actually figured out, would there be a take-up of services that were rolled out? So I found out what the homeless needed and also what the services were needed and where they were the availability. So I then said to myself, fine, I'm going to establish this organization because what's out there isn't working. So at the end of 2013, we registered at our founding board meeting. I actually invited a number of people to join the board, very skilled people with a range of skill sets. So then I said to them, this is what we're going to do, this is the long vision, this is the rollout that's going to take. And with any social enterprise, your first 2 years are pure, unadulterated, I wouldn't call them hell, but it's the most, it's a struggle to do every piece because you can't really fundraise until you've become registered. So we've registered as a non-profit organization, we've registered as a non-profit company, and we have public benefit organization status pending, okay? We may at some point also list, register as a PTY limited, but that so we can then access all the options. So I then said to myself, fine, people begging on the streets is just one, they're just becoming more and more dependent. So let us start and roll out these vouchers, which we will do later this year. We will connect them to participating soup kitchens where we are already offering counselling. We're offering counselling at 3 different soup kitchens in the Randburg area. And while we are during counselling, we're starting to assess their job readiness and what job skills they've got. So we're then looking at a overnight shelter with a training centre attached, and we think we found the site for this, and the proposal is going into the city this week. So that will be our rock, because we've just moved into offices as well. I started it actually at my home, and then tried to sort of get the whole thing and said I don't want to incur any unnecessary risk, but we've now got our own offices in Randburg next door to MultiChoice. And I looked at this chain of services, and I said we're going to have this chain which includes the soup kitchens, and nothing will be for free. So we've had to change people's mindsets at churches that if you're going to have offer soup kitchens, people we need to get people to bring in something, so that it starts creating a value for that person. So we will our first overnight shelter with the training centre. It's actually going to be called a skills training hub. We're no longer going to call it an overnight shelter. It's going to be a skills training hub with accommodation for trainees. So that you would, and that is how far we've moved. So we're looking at creating this within the next 3-4 months. Job creation, we have started to do some placement of people, but that's also hit and miss because they need the ongoing counselling in changing their mindset. And we are doing stuff with the homeless, not for the homeless. So they will have agency, and we will create cooperatives and stuff. Yes?
I'm not sure if I understand what you mean by saying in your previous slide that nothing will be for free. So do they then have to bring in some ingredients?
No, that we just have to bring in like empty bottles or something that we can use in our recycling thing. So that, because the thing is, if you give somebody something for free, it creates dependency. So we're trying to start it from the very beginning. So if you come in with a voucher, you will get, that's like your ticket to get stuff. But if you don't have a voucher, then you would need to bring in like an empty bottle or a couple of, something like that, so that it becomes a starting point from that point on. Anyway, we're going to, with the job creation, we're going to also do a lot of training with the guys. We're going to train them in food preparation and food production. We're working together with the hotel school on that regard. We will be doing carpentry, etc. So we will, the whole chain of services is counselling from entry to exit. We're also starting a running club. Now, this running club is based on a global social enterprise that was started by a very fascinating woman by the name of Anne Malham in the United States in Philadelphia, where she used to run past a homeless shelter, and she thought, why are these guys sitting on the side of the road? Let's actually get them running. And her thing, it's called Back on My Feet Again. And she started it a couple of years ago, and it's now across in many different states throughout the United States. So I've written to her and asked her for tips, and she's actually moved on from there, but she's got some people running the whole show. And she said with pleasure, so she's shared a lot with us. So we will have a running club, soccer. We will also be involved selling the big issue and homeless talk on a much more expanded scale throughout Johannesburg. Though the big, sorry.
So just on the question of soccer, when you say is it all related sports number one, or it is going to be a soccer club?
Well, we're going to form a soccer club with the homeless guys that, maybe who are at the training centre, and then we will try and play soccer with other corporates in the area, like during lunch hour, just a short soccer game. There is also the World Homeless Soccer Cup that people can take part in, so we need to start looking at that. So it's it's a multi process thing. Sorry, this has got a bit sort of squashed. It normally far out, so that we would have this whole chain that goes from from the streets to the vouchers, the soup kitchens, the shelter and the training, the counselling throughout. And when people have got work, we're partnering with Josh Coe to lease a couple. They're going to be building low-cost rental stock in Randburg, near the Randburg taxi rank. And what we've asked them if we can rent a couple of their units, so that when somebody starts working, they don't have the deposit to put down on a room. So we need to get people to be able to sort of pay weekly with a little bit more that they can, add on. So then they're building up that resource. And also they could continue with the counselling at that process. Okay, now how are we going to fund this? And this is the interesting thing, because I thought, how am I going to actually fund this entity? Because, things don't happen overnight, and also money is very tight. So I've come up with a thing called shared value. Was a concept devised by Professor Michael Porter from Harvard University. And he actually says that if businesses invest in social change, they should actually reap higher profits, because it ends up being a win-win for everybody. So I have spoken to a couple of estate agencies, and we've come up with a thing that if they give us a percentage of their sales of houses, so we worked it out on a sliding scale from like an apartment to a mansion kind of thing, they invest that in us. We deal with the problem and getting people off the streets, and therefore the whole area improves, and therefore it becomes in greater demand, those houses, and the profits go up. So I've done the same with sort of accommodation establishments like hotels, and they've also said as soon as you get your shelter or your training centre, we will invest. So it's all been a bit sort of like piecing it all together. And the idea is also it would be a bed tax for the bedless. That's what it's called. It does work in certain cities in the United States very well. And as I say, this is, based on trying to get the best practice from everywhere. And crowdfunding, we open to crowdfunding. Definitely. In fact, we benefited from a crowdfunding site, but unfortunately, because we couldn't get the shelter, we actually had to return the money. So, so it gets to be quite tricky in terms of, is it the chicken or the egg kind of thing, and how do you manage to get all of these things going at the same time? But we've got lots of people volunteering, etc. So Randburg is the pilot phase. But we've already had requests from other places across Joburg. And we're saying, fine, then you need to establish a committee in that area, so we can then have roll out there. Because we've got a Randburg committee that's actually doing fundraising and for the shelter and for the skills hub. So, so we're forming partnerships with a whole host of different people and local groups. And JOSH, which stands for the Johannesburg Organization of Services to the Homeless, but it's actually to and with the homeless, is not a me, but a we. I have this team of my board of directors. I also have a fabulous team of volunteers. We have opened our offices, and as I say, we only moved into our offices a month and a half ago. So we're quite, we're still taking baby steps. But, I've gone from being a community activist to founding this entity. And I must say I'm amazed at people's generosity, at people's willingness to engage and saying, how can we get involved? And going back a bit, looking at the SECB program, I must say it was an incredible learning experience to actually move one's own mindset from that of being like a social worker to being a social entrepreneur, taking the risks, looking at what's optional, what's possible, looking at making it sustainable from day one. So that's as far as we've got, and that is what our logo is. It basically says you go from the streets through our program and you re-enter society and you find your actual rainbow, not the pot of gold, and you find your new life in Joburg. And once we've done it in Joburg, we will then expand it elsewhere. So that's as far as we've got. Fascinating in getting involved with the homeless, because all of them have got skills, and really it's there by the grace of God, go you and I, and the way our lives have turned out. So, some people have, had a slew of bad luck, and, you've got to just take the person there and work from there. And given our level of poverty in the rural areas, also our high unemployment rate, we are also dealing with the unemployed as well, because they are, even if they on the verge of becoming homeless, in an effort to prevent homelessness, we will get engaged with the unemployed. Okay.
I must say that I really appreciate your approach in terms of creating sustainable models, in terms of creating employment, and also trying to get people integrated in terms of getting them employment so that they also uplift themselves as much as they're being uplifted. Because the tendency, what I've seen, especially with organizations that are geared towards helping people who are homeless or people who are unemployed, there's a tendency of only reacting when those people enter white spaces. So there's a tendency of not really affording assistance if there are people who are homeless in townships, because not necessarily disrupting white spaces. So there's only a reaction when those people come into cities, when they become a problem. So I must say I commend you in terms of the sustainable model, in terms of understanding that there are things which are very intricate. So understanding that homelessness isn't just isolated to being homeless, it's also married to unemployment and being from a poor socio-economic background.
Yeah, I'll come back with you. I'll respond to you. Let me just take your question as well.
Yes, I also think that this is a great initiative. But what I've seen recently is that the number of people the homeless in the city of Johannesburg,
yes,
the age is becoming younger and younger and younger. Yes, I've seen, Durban, that Durban is filled with small, homeless children. But I mean, over the years, I've lived in the city for 5 years now, the age is becoming younger and younger and younger, right? And then there are politics within these groups of children as well, right? So there are ringleaders and there are boys, or now there's also girls. I'm starting to see females now, you know, that are homeless. But of course, they have to perform a masculine gender in order to survive on the streets. And so they're ringleaders and whatever. And most of them are kept together by an addiction to drugs, right? So it's the glue. It's you know yes. So and also a fascination with this sort of street life, with the sort of highs and whatever. And I'm saying, like, does Josh have a policy or any idea around how to get involved into, you know, to reel those children in? Because I live in the city. I have conversations with them. You know, I find out their names. I find out where home is and whatever. They have really no interest so much because they don't want to think about you know, a tomorrow or changing their lives, or they most of them really just excited to be out in the streets and to be independent and to be responsible for themselves. So how do you reel young people in then at that age?
Okay, Josh is at the moment dealing only with adults because we feel that, you know, that is where we should engage at this stage. If you are in the inner city, there are organisations like MESS in Hillbrow that deal with them, and there are others that deal specifically with children. You know, so one understands that the children have all generally run away from very abusive families and dysfunctional families, and then they have gone onto the streets and they've developed a drug addiction, you know, and with Nyape and everything else, it's quite endemic. That needs to be dealt with in a very specific manner. What we're looking at people who are accessing soup kitchens and dealing with that, and churches offer them all over the place. So yes, we are still, you know, and will to a large extent be in the suburbs, so to speak, because we're looking at the fact that there is this need throughout Johannesburg. We have temporary shelters in all of our river systems, you know, where people are sleeping in the rivers, and in Randburg they're also sleeping in the Stratham Park industrial area, and also in the CBD of Randburg. So, you know, and it therefore looks at sort of how it, in a way, devalues that area. So that's the kind of approach that I've taken to actually deal with it in a sustainable manner. Once we've rolled it out in Randburg, we will be able to, like, cookie cut it with modifications to other areas. And yes, you're right. It is, when it enters officially sort of white spaces kind of thing. But the fact is that if you look at it, and my experience of working with the homeless in Cape Town, it's everywhere. So you've got to actually address it across the board. So there's no reason why we will not have a Randburg shelter, one in Alexandra, one in Diepsloot, to actually deal with that kind of problem. So it's not restricted to previously white areas. It's just where we find the concentrations, and if there's a need, and if there's a manner in which we can create a sustainable entity. And yes, our training programs might be very different at different skills hubs. But we've got to start somewhere. So Randburg is our pilot phase, and once we've rolled that out during this year, we will be able to then expand elsewhere.
So earlier in the presentation, I think you were saying that in terms of looking at people getting into housing, that since people don't have the savings built up, you'll have like a weekly rental type thing. But all of those can tend to cost more, I think is what you were saying. So I think my general question is whether it's helping people find housing or whether it's accessing programs that are sort of sustainable from the start. How do you deal with the question of access? And if people are ultimately paying more in rental over the course of a month because they're only paying a week at a time, or if they aren't able to access programs at the beginning because they've got so many multiple issues going on that they're really starting with a smaller set of skills. how are you, as you're starting out, how are you dealing with the question of what about the people who can't access the services because there is a fee or there is something attached to it?
Okay. Look, the thing is that the person who would be entering the self-catering accommodation would have gone through our whole program already, which includes the counselling, the mindset change, etc.
What does that mean, mindset change?
It means that you've got to change somebody from their almost being stuck state to being able to being self-sufficient, run their own lives, you see. So basically it would be budgeting, life skills, counselling, etc. Dealing with endemic issues, psychological issues, where they are in terms of, themselves. Cannot we do any family reunification, for instance? Would they want, if they got a skill here, there's an organisation in Cape Town called the Carpenter's Shop, where they train people in carpentry and AutoCADing. Now the carpentry one, that you would take like Joe the homeless, for instance, and this is an actual example. Joe the homeless actually comes from the Eastern Cape, from a rural area, and he wants to go back there. He doesn't want to be he's got a family there. He actually still wants to provide for his family. But he can't go back unless he's got something to go back with. In other words, so therefore he's trained in carpentry. You start discussing with him. They found out that there was nobody in that area that made coffins. So they partnered with Doug's funeral parlour, who helped them design a very cheap coffin. So then they went and worked out with him a whole business plan, how he could source the things, what tools he would need, and basically with sharing out the thing of getting some donations and him saving up for certain of the tools that he would need. He returned to the place that he came from with a new skill, a new business, and now employs 10 people. So that is the possibility. I got a phone call the other day from a homeless architect and musician. Everybody's got a skill, and we are trying to do this and bring people recognizing that they actually have skills. They are wanted members of society. They're not just outcasts and forgotten. Many people, you'll find that they've come into Joburg, they managed to get a piece job as a garden guy or as a domestic worker or something. Now the people that employed them have either moved away, so now they've lost their job, they've lost their place of residence, all that kind of stuff. So there are many different types of homeless people and many different stories.
On that note,
does that answer your question?
Yes.
Partly or fully?
No, I think I need to.
I felt that I was missing out on something in terms.
No, I think it does. And as you start out, is like the Joe the homeless or the homeless, different communities that you're in touch with, have they, as part of your consultation, as you've built your board and built different groups of volunteers, is part of that working with people who have come out of a homeless situation or are presently homeless to say, do these interventions make sense to you?
We've got all kinds of people who are volunteering. We've got people who like housewives and people who are retired people. We have people who have, like one guy's a security guard, works night shift. So he wants to actually better himself. So he thinks, well, if he has a job, if he volunteers for Josh, he can get other references. We've got people who themselves are not working or they're studying. So they're coming to volunteer so that they can also get a reference. Because I said to them, look, I'm happy to give you a reference. For them, we all volunteers are not paid at all. They are genuine volunteers. We don't even pay stipends. Yeah, so that's really it. But with the guys being in the self-catering thing, yes, they will. We will keep a certain amount. They'll pay with a weekly. Then we'll keep a little bit. They'll pay a little bit more per week. So we will keep their pay. The money, and so that it builds up. And then say to them, fine. When you found a room, we will be prepared to pay whoever the person is the deposit on the room. Okay.
I just wanted to clarify, ma'am, whether the counselling happens only in the soup kitchen and not necessarily on the streets.
No, we've connected it to soup kitchens and now actually to our office. So we do counselling at the office, on different days of the week. When I'm not trying to set up all the other bits as well. And I've made a conscious decision that my board and I made a conscious decision that only once we've got this in place will we start employing staff, apart from me.
Because the reason I ask is I once spoke to this homeless lady and she was very articulate and she didn't look in any way altered or anything, but she was eating from the bin, and she mentioned to me that it's because I've been bewitched. So we are bewitched, that's why we eat from the bin. But I was wondering if there's a cultural aspect to it or whatever that needs to be looked into. Like obviously she's altered if she thinks she's bewitched. Yeah, but obviously she's altered, but I mean she's not going to get to a soup kitchen because she doesn't think she can.
No, look, I mean, the homeless are now starting to talk to others and saying, if you go to the office, you will get help. It's because, most soup kitchens, they will offer a prayer, give it out a thing, but that's where it stops. So we're saying, fine, we will offer counselling and job skills assessment at that point. Then we can also assess the person's psychological state, whether they've got any psychiatric issues, what kind of help they need. So we're working also with the local clinics, and we're going to work with medical professionals to get them to get proper help. Yes?
Okay, thank you. Firstly, I'd like to commend you on the good initiative that you are doing.
Thank you.
Another thing is that as a person who's also running a small non-profit organization, so earlier on you mentioned something that you said your public benefit status is still pending. So as one person, part of my job that I'm doing, I'm responsible for legalization and formalization of an organization that I'm in, which is already registered under Act 71 of 97.
Yeah.
So I would like to understand what you mean by saying public benefit status.
Okay. If companies give you donations, then you have to be registered as a public benefit organization with SARS. And it takes a process. The best thing is once you've got your second set of annual financial statements, which our financial year end is today, and therefore we will have our second set of annual financial statements. It's a hell of a lot easier to get it because they know that you have good governance, you've got a track record, etc., and that's what they're needing to check. And it basically, each of these registrations require certain compliance rules, reporting structures, etc. But it does mean that you can then give somebody a tax certificate, that they have donated to you, and they may be able to claim it. Yeah. Okay.
Does Josh have a adult literacy program? Some of the people in the school that you guys see?
We have started one.
Oh, okay.
Well, we've just begun it actually.
Oh, right.
Who is
running it? It's just
it's basically volunteers at the moment.
All right.
Yeah, but we've also got at our offices, which are really tiny. We're also about to take out all of the flowers next door to it, and we're going to move the flowers somewhere else because we've got an office on church property. Where they actually have 2 soup kitchens per week at the at the Randburg Methodist Church. next door to multi-choice. So there's a little office there, and what we're going to do is we're going to take out all their flowers, we're going to turn it into a vegetable garden.
Because what also helps with that adult literacy is not only just providing like education, English, but also some of the homeless people have lost their documents, like their matric certificates and stuff. So that could also be something that you guys can think about, and also how they can write effective CVs. That's something that people actually
Some of our volunteers are actually, once we've done the first initial counselling sessions with them, and they sign a contract with us as if you were going to a doctor or something, that they actually sign a contract with us that they want help and they're willing to do community work and do other things so that people can understand that they're trying to help themselves. And one of our volunteers is busy putting everybody onto a database with their full CVs, so that each person has a CV. Yes?
I actually want to ask more about that voucher booklet.
Yes.
Do you have any with you? How
Um,
does it work?
We did a pilot project of these. We actually did different colours and sold them only at the churches where to test whether the homeless would be interested in Johannesburg.
So you sold them to who?
No, we're not selling them at the moment. We've done the pilot program, but what we've agreed with the city of Joburg is once we've got a full database of soup kitchens across the city, we want to roll it out like in the whole of Region B, so that we can actually start it in a practical way. Then that means that we will also have at each soup kitchen a signboard saying this is a participating Josh soup kitchen.
So do they get sold to just anyone, and then
It means
for
it,
example me, and then I give it to a homeless person?
yes.
Oh.
It means that you go to your Pick and Pay, whatever, and you buy a book of tickets.
And how much would it cost?
And well, at the moment we're busy working out that. At the moment, I can't. Everything's sort of work in progress. This is what the joys of a social enterprise is. We've got some idea what we'll charge, but the idea is that we also will have signboards up on, throughout, like throughout Linden or throughout Randburg, and or Ferndale, and it'll have, participating soup kitchens and list the churches. So that'll be on like billboards on, as you drive along the road. So the idea is these are based on things, so that we are developing this in partnership with the city of Joburg.
Yes, just with regards to the recreational activities, you said that you're starting, running and then like a soccer tournament.
Yes.
So sorry, can you please, or at least just what the idea is?
It's basically so that we are developing the whole person. It's one thing to do skills training, but it's also, one needs to get people into, feeling that they're actually members of a community. So one of the coaches at the Randburg Harriers has offered to help coach our guys. So we're going to, we will also give them T-shirts and stuff saying, not without labeling people and saying, hi, I'm a Josh homeless guy. We want to, people to also engage the fact that, yes, this is a homeless guy. He is trying to get fit. And by getting fit, he also changes his own feelings about himself. So, so that's how we're doing it. So we'll.
And that won't be limited to male participation only.
No, and we've got women and so female homeless people. Yeah. Hi.
Yeah. I would like to know, I think the booklet idea is really good. But I want to know, how would you inform the homeless people, listen, we have this vouchers and stuff. Are you going to run a campaign to inform them about it? Because, if you do implement that, and someone buys a booklet and you hand it to the homeless person, and they don't know about it
When we roll it out, as I say, we did this on a very small scale just to test it, and we basically sold it to at churches, and we had a system whereby, you know, Church X sold blue ones, so we could then see where Joe the homeless, who was given one by somebody from that church, where he actually accessed it. And we just basically gave at the back where the churches were that were participating. Basically what we'll do is the homeless have a pretty good grapevine, I might add. So, but we will be rolling it out with like a campaign so that the general public will know about this program. Yeah, so we need to explain it more to the general public than we need to the homeless, because they will be told at each soup kitchen that they've now participating in our program. Yes?
So I applaud the effort that you're doing and to tackle homelessness, which is a very complex issue.
It is.
I do have issues with the booklet.
Yes.
I've got issue with giving off a voucher instead of giving cash, and encouraging people not to give cash. And it's similar to critiques that people have of like development countries, and the developed world will say, no, we know what's better for you, so we're going to give you and recommend for you X, Y, and Z, instead of giving you cash and allowing you to have those options. So what I would prefer, obviously this is an idealized world and maybe you're dealing with it on the ground so you know more of the realities, is, for example, in Mayfair, where I'm from, there's the Somali community that's very strong over there, has set up hotels that cater to everybody, but within that hotel they've got a few rooms in each of the hotels that offer very cheap accommodation. It's like 25 rand a night or whatever it is. And by giving people cash and allowing them and giving them those options of where they might be able to stay, get food that are cheaper than current market prices, I think that gives them more dignity, rather than saying like, here's this piece of paper because I don't trust you with money because I think you're going to go do drugs with it. So I'm not going to trust you with cash because I don't know what you're going to do with it. And in exchange, then you have to go to a church or you have to go to a certain institution. Not taking away from the fact that maybe the work that you're doing there, I think the skills assessment and the counseling is essential. But for me, there's I'm psychologist, not disposed to this idea of, to me, it feels like an indignity being perpetrated.
Look, I understand that, you know, I wrangled with the whole idea, and when I went and saw how it started the process at the other organisation that has it in Cape Town, I thought, well, it's worth a try. You know, we also, you know, people need to have different options. Some people don't want to give cash. Some people would prefer to give an access thing and then support the organisation. So they would be supporting us by buying the vouchers, giving it to somebody, but that voucher carries with it a value. That they would get either, you know, they could get some clothing or they could get something in exchange. It does carry a value that you would get some benefit. So it's not it's not just, well, you can't get counselling without it.
Okay, just for the purpose of time,
yes.
I will allow you to finish up the presentation. I'm not sure if you were done already.
I'm done with the presentation.
Okay, cool. So I'm just going to take 5 questions because we already left with 10 minutes. So Sabi, and then brother here. So let's start with you.
My question's very quick. I'm just wondering, what about those vouchers? Just an idea. Could they possibly be used to get access to hygiene products, for example? Do they work with that?
Yeah, that's what we're doing. We're giving people out because the interesting thing is the office is attached to the office is a place where people can do washing their clothes, have a shower, there's ablutions, etc. So what we're doing is we're giving out a care pack to people, so that there's a pack with a toothbrush, toothpaste, you know, soap, face, hand towel, you know, this sort of very basic sort of stuff.
I was also thinking specifically for women, because sanitary pads and tampons is such a huge issue for women's
Yes, no, we cater for everybody. So I do understand your dilemma, and it is a dilemma. And also when people are part of our, being trained, that we will also say to people, if you'd like to show people like a card that you are being trained, and ask them to support us. So it's a very complex issue. It's very complex to try and figure out the best option. It's just, our main thrust is the skills training.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
rather just.
Yes.
So yeah, I just wanted to, you probably know better than I do in connection with what he's saying. I actually received a pamphlet in Cape Town from guys who work on the streets of city workers. Basically, they were handing out these pamphlets which actually said that you must not give the beggars money. And it was sort of like a campaign to stop begging.
Yeah.
How would you balance that with the program that you're running? Do you think it's wise to be doing things like that, whereas we know that the people are in need, and they made this claim that there are places that help these people out? So we don't have a guarantee as the people on the street, but they said you shouldn't feel that the beggar is putting you into a corner, basically to give them something. I know maybe they said that some of the beggars would sort of like play the sympathy card basically on you for you to give them something, which is, I don't think it's a big issue from what I found thus far.
Look, the thing is that it's better to support organizations that are trying to help people than, but helping individuals and giving cash to them, to me, we need to have a lot more services in Joburg, before we even reach a point of saying don't give to beggars, quite frankly, because the services, we've got so few of them. So I just thought, well, we have to have more, and effective ones.
Great. If there's not any more questions, I'll take this opportunity to thank you so much for the presentation. I think the work you're doing is very amazing. We need more organizations that are sensitive, I think, to our people's struggle, and that really understand the mentality of people. I like the idea that you also use therapy, because at the end of the day, you cannot just take people away from the street without really mind shifting and at least working that like on it. So thank you so much. Let's keep this going.